Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Brittnee. Today's chewy brown sugar caramel recipe is one that I've been wanting to make for a while. It's been probably 10 years since I last made these, and I've only ever made them once myself. My mom used to make these caramels literally every Christmas growing up. I definitely think it was one of her favorite treats around the holidays. Anyway, last Christmas I got thinking about them and I've been wanting to try them out, and I'm finally getting around to it. And it's only August. This recipe is so simple and easy to make. In fact, I think it's a pretty common recipe, probably one of those back in the day that came from a book and just got passed around to everyone. Also, one more thing, just for fun. Comment down below how you pronounce the word caramel, because as you can hear, I say caramel. I know that some people say caramel or caramel. This is on my mind today as I'm filming a caramel video because a couple weeks ago I got a salty comment about how I pronounce the word. And I actually did an Instagram poll asking if my followers say caramel or caramel, and it actually was about 50-50. So, and interesting, but also it makes sense that most of the people where I'm from, like around Utah and like some of my friends from like California, so I think like Western United States, say caramel like me. So it's just an accent thing. I'm always paranoid about pronouncing things wrong, but it's funny because you just can't win with people on the internet sometimes. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, so this week's video is the chewy caramel recipe, and next week's video I will be showing you how to hand dip them in chocolate, and then I'll go over a bunch of hand dipped chocolate decoration ideas. So that's going to be really fun. So if you're interested in that, be sure to watch out for my next video. And of course, once it's out, I will link it in this description down below as well. Also, just a reminder, if you don't want to miss out on videos, be sure to subscribe, and you can click the bell notification so that you get alerted every time I post a new video. All right, let's get into the recipe. Here are the supplies and ingredients that you'll need. A pot. I'm using this non-stick one that I have because it's just about the right size. A high heat spatula. A 9x13 glass dish. I love this one because it comes with a lid. A pitcher that you will fill with ice and water. A good thermometer. You can do without it for this recipe, but it can also help. Some pan spray. 2 cubes or 8 ounces of butter, 1 14-ounce can of sweetened condensed milk, 1 cup of light corn syrup, two cups packed brown sugar. You can use dark or light, whatever you prefer. I'm using light here. And about 1 teaspoon of vanilla. The first thing that I like to do is grab my pot and set it on the stove at medium-low and slowly melt the butter. While the butter is melting, I spray my glass dish with the pan spray. And then pour the cold water into a bowl, holding back the ice, and this cold water will be used to test the texture of our caramel throughout the process. Once the butter's melted, I add in the brown sugar and corn syrup and stir it all together. Then I just add in the sweetened condensed milk and stir that in until it's all smooth. At this point, I increase my heat to medium and bring the mixture to a boil. And then I just set a timer. In my mom's instructions for this recipe, it says 10 to 12 minutes, so I started with 10 minutes. Throughout the 10 minutes, I'll test the caramel texture in my bowl of cold water, along with measure the temperature. As the mixture continues to boil, I want to keep stirring it, and this is why having an actual high heat spatula is important. You want your spatula to be made for high temperatures so that you can keep it in the hot mixture for a long time as you stir. After about 2 minutes, I checked the temperature, just out of curiosity to see where we're at, and it measured around 93 degrees Celsius or 199 degrees Fahrenheit. Now to test the caramel texture, you drop a little bit into the bowl of cold water and give it a couple seconds to cool down. This is mimicking what the final texture of the caramels would be if you took it off the stove now and let it cool down. I did this test after about 4 minutes, and as expected, the texture is still pretty soft. It's been 6 minutes now, and the temperature is measuring around 130 degrees Celsius or 217 degrees Fahrenheit. Now the boiling time will be different for everyone depending on your pot and how hot your stove is. And the final temperature can also be different depending on what altitude you live. Higher altitudes will use a bit lower temperature than lower altitudes, but this is why the cold water test is helpful. Also, each person will prefer a different texture. When I'm making caramels that aren't fluid enough to pipe into a chocolate shell, then I'm most likely looking for a chewy caramel, which means I want it to actually be chewy. But some people like really soft caramels. It's just personal preference. Okay, now at about 8 minutes, I checked the temperature again, and it was around 105 degrees Celsius or 221 Fahrenheit. And then I also did the water test, and the texture was still pretty soft. After my timer went off at 10 minutes, the temperature was around 108 degrees Celsius or 226 Fahrenheit. I didn't think it would be quite ready still, so I let it boil until about 12 minutes, and I tested it again in the cold water, and it was much firmer now and could hold its shape. The temperature I was thinking I wanted to get at least to was 112 Celsius or 234 Fahrenheit. So I measured again at 14 minutes and I was there. So I immediately pulled it off the stove. Now I just stir it all together until the bubbles stop and it looks nice and smooth. And then I did one final test in the cold water just to see how the texture will end up. As you can see, the caramel is firm and holds its own shape well. This is a great chewy texture for me, but many people may like it a little bit softer. I like mine pretty chewy, especially when I'm going to be dipping them in chocolate. Now I just pour all the caramel into my glass dish and smooth it out a bit with the spatula. Of course, it'll level itself out more as it sits as well. Once the caramel has cooled down a bit, I put the lid on to keep it from drying out and let it set up at least overnight. So I got busy and my caramel has actually been sitting here for 2 nights, so they're definitely set up and ready to cut. Ignore the little bite out of the corner. I had to taste them to make sure they were good. So I'm just running a butter knife around the edge to help release the caramels. And because I greased my glass dish quite a bit, I'm hoping that I can get the caramel out in a sheet rather than cut them inside of the dish. It's much easier to get clean and sharp squares when you cut them outside of a pan. So I just tipped my glass dish upside down and let it sit for a minute on the counter. I could tell the caramel was loose when I was cutting the edge, and one corner started pulling away, so I just grabbed it gently and gave it a little bit of help. I maybe went a little bit too crazy with the pan spray and it left a bit of extra on the caramel, so I'm just carefully wiping that off with a clean paper towel. I don't want them to feel greasy on the outside. The other option, rather than use spray, is that you can always line your pan with wax paper instead, but honestly, I think this is easier. And here's our nice sheet of caramel. And this size pan gives the perfect thickness of caramel for this recipe. So now all I do is square off all of the edges, which you can give to your family as samples or eat yourself. Here's a visual of the texture. Firm and chewy, but definitely not at all hard, and will still be quite easy to chew. This is my favorite caramel texture to bite into. And I probably love this firmer texture because this is how my mom always used to make it. I'll cut 3 rows in this video to show you how they look, and I'll wrap the rest of the sheet for my next video where I'll dip them in chocolate and then decorate them. The reason I don't want to cut the square yet is that I don't want the corners to settle and round out over time. This caramel is firm enough that it probably would hold its shape pretty well, but just to be safe, I want to cut them nice and crisp the same day I dip them in the chocolate. And I don't have time tonight, so I wrap this well and set it aside. I like to mark the caramel squares before I cut them out, and oh my goodness, I got so lucky with the spacing on that. I was just eyeballing it. If your knife starts to stick, you can add a little grease to it, but I didn't have to today. And if you like, you can add a little sea salt to the top of the caramels, and they're ready to eat. All right, guys, there is my mom's chewy brown sugar caramel recipe. If you give it a try, be sure to let me know how it goes. If you liked this video, please like the video and leave me a comment down below. It helps me out a lot. And if you want to see a bunch of dipped chocolate decoration ideas, watch out for next week's video. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, today's the day. If you'd like to see something else that's sweet, just click on one of these thumbnails. Thanks so much for watching today, and I'll see you soon. Bye.